listening to Cinema Spin. Hello again, everybody. I am Matt.
And I'm Jason.
And welcome to a new episode of Cinema Spin.
We're back.
We're back again. And, man, another week of movies. And, man, it's rough out there.
It is rough out there. But we're making do. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I did go to a theater and I did watch a movie. I guess that's the goal.
Yes, right. That is the goal. To get you out of the house.
That's right. I was the only one in my screening.
There were a few people.
And I checked.
In mine.
I went at 2:45 today,
mm-hmm.
and I was contemplating going to the 12:20,
mm-hmm.
and I looked at the tickets sold at like 12:15,
uh-huh.
and they had sold one ticket for that showing as well. So it looked like two afternoon showings for Studio 666, and a total of 2 people were in them.
So the movie we're talking about is Studio 666, and the words come down. This movie's bombed.
Has it or has it?
It has, but this is a niche movie. This movie is not for everybody.
It is, but that would beg the question: why is it in theaters?
Why does it exist?
Or why is it in theaters? You know,
why is it in theaters? That's a good.
Why
question.
isn't it a bonus on a Foo Fighters concert DVD?
So yes. Okay. So
but continue.
Yes, you've said the F word, so we're going to get into that. So this is Studio 666. This is a movie starring the rock band Foo Fighters. Also, sort of conceived by their lead singer Dave Grohl, very famous rocker. Started out as a drummer for Nirvana. So this is inspired by true events. Studio 666 is a horror comedy starring the rock band Foo Fighters and what happened when they tried to record an album in an Encino mansion that is haunted. Legends say that 25 years earlier, a band called Dream Widow, I have all their albums, tried to record a record at the house, but the lead singer went insane, and Dream Widow was not the next Jane's Addiction. And I'll be damned if Foo Fighter frontman Dave Grohl doesn't begin to act very strangely when they arrive at the house. Horror ensues. This movie was shot in secret and on the cheap in 2020 at the mansion where Foo Fighters had actually recorded their 2019 album, Menace at Midnight. That's the basis for... That's why it's based on a true story. There were no murders or demonic possessions during the actual recording, though. Whitney Cummings, Will Forte, Jeff Garland make appearances in an effort to bring the comedy. What did you think, Matt?
Well, let me start by saying I'm going to start with my position on the Foo Fighters.
Yes.
I appreciate the Foo Fighters to a certain point. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to use the word fan because fan comes from fanatic.
Yes.
And I'm extremely uncomfortable with that.
Yes.
I'm a fan of the Cardinals because I have an unhealthy obsession with things.
Yes.
That the overuse in our society of fan kind of interests me because, if somebody said I'm a big fan of the Lord, you'd be like, oh, that's pretty normal. But if you said I'm a Jesus fanatic, you might take a step back or two, right? But yet they mean the same thing.
I'm a big fan of the Lord. We should put that on bumper sticker. Right.
They mean the same thing, but they kind of have a different connotation, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so I hesitate to use this. I'm not going to say I'm a fan of the Foo Fighters because I'm not a fanatic.
And also, they're a band that have fanatics, right?
They do. And I tend to like their earlier stuff more than I like their later stuff. But that comes, I think I did benefit somewhat by being pretty well versed in the makeup of the Foo Fighters. Mm-hmm. I thought the first hour was somewhat watchable. Yeah. Chuckle at a few things. There's a joke about Pearl Jam High Five I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah, there's some there's some inside jokes.
There's some inside jokes about Dave coming up with
music.
His new song, and it's one of the old songs that have been around forever.
Yeah.
Sort of fan service type stuff. Mm-hmm. And I got a kick out of some of that. And I thought the first half, I thought, you know what? This is stupid. Everybody involved knows how stupid it is. Mm-hmm. It's kind of fun. But the longer it went on... And it does seem long. I mean, it takes forever just for somebody to get possessed, right?
Yeah.
It's just too long.
Yeah.
If this had been an hour little lark like I said, on a concert DVD, it'd have been a lot more fun. And that's probably what it was planned to be, and then it just snowballed into being a full-blown movie.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe there's a decent,
probably a pandemic story here to where...
Maybe there's a lovable 30-minute short film here that Foo Fighters fans would have really loved.
Yeah.
I mean...
And maybe if you're a fanatic, you get more out of this than I did. But I didn't get a whole lot out of it beyond that first hour, which I thought was okay. And after that, I just kind of ugh. I mean, it's to be honest with you, it's no worse than a lot of the other horror crap that we've had to watch.
Yeah.
But it's definitely no better.
Yeah. I mean, it's rated on a horror movie on a low budget horror movie scale. This is medium.
Yeah.
Bad.
Yeah.
And then you add on top of that a couple of funny comedians and the thrill of seeing some Foo Fighters try to act. Then you've got something that's at least a novel, worth it as a novelty.
The best version of this still is probably bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is what it is. I mean. The acting is not great because these aren't actors.
Yeah.
Some of them do better than others. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of a pandemic lark, right? The Foo Fighters made a movie during the pandemic,
right.
But why is it in theaters? Is the question.
Yeah. That's a great question, and I think I mean, theaters are, I guess, looking for content right now, and so throw this out there, and
it's like staring at the sun. Though I mean,
fire up the. They're looking for something to sort of kill some time, right? So fire up the projectors. To put my cards on the table on my relationship with Foo Fighters, I was actually very shocked about 5 or 6 years ago to sort of find out that we Gen Xers all just love Foo Fighters. Because to me, Foo Fighters was a band that had a couple of songs that were radio hits back, 25 years ago. And then, I don't know, kind of went away. And I guess they never did go away for certain people.
No, they never went away.
But and maybe I just stopped listening to FM radio.
As a lot of people did.
As a lot of people did, right. But when, a good friend of mine,
I would say actually saw this movie. I would say they're the biggest rock and roll band in the world, hands down. If
really,
if it's not U2 right now, it's definitely the Foo Fighters.
Okay,
and U2 hasn't done anything in a long time.
Well, that was the thing when I do have a friend who is a fan, like a super fan, right? And he's who made me aware of this movie and who I saw this movie with. And he told me, I guess back in 2016, that he was going to see Foo Fighters, and I thought, oh well. They're going to be at the Family Arena, and maybe Fastball's going to open for them, right? Or Chumbawamba, right? But no, they're at the Enterprise Center, an 18,000 seat venue, right?
So they can sell out Wembley. And,
people love Foo Fighters. If you love Foo Fighters, there's a movie for you. It's called Studio 666, and
the Foo Fighters.
Either this movie's for you or it isn't.
Here's the appeal. Here's the appeal of the Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
The Foo Fighters are about as hard as you can go and really maintain strong melody in music.
Okay.
Without it becoming like thrash.
Okay. Okay.
There's always a strong melodic background to most Foo Fighter songs.
Yeah.
They might have a section where it almost goes thrashy, but or really metally, but they have a tendency to be, the riffs are very melody driven. Yeah. There's a clear melody to most Foo Fighter songs.
Yeah. Okay. And I realize that there is there's a certain craftsmanship to the music of Foo Fighters that it's elaborate in a way that bands of their same sort of genre is maybe an elaborate in old fashioned ways. Like there's several guitars playing at once. It's not like elaborate in the way
that three guitarists who always play constantly.
Yeah, right. They have 3 guitarists. There's 6 people in the band, so they have 3 guitarists who are always playing constantly. So that the melodies are more complex. It's not complex, like I said, in the way that like a Radiohead album has sort of these complex soundscapes and everything. But
now, to anybody who knows the Foo Fighters, this is not news to. But I mean, obviously, to Pat Smear, who's in the Foo Fighters, he was a touring member of Nirvana.
Yeah, right. He was basically the 4th member of Nirvana.
He was. Yeah, they always had him on stage when they played concerts. I mean, big concerts.
So yeah, if you like Foo Fighters and you want to see them being silly and splattering blood on each other and attacking each other with chainsaws, you're going to like this movie that you saw this movie.
Yeah, the gore here is pretty extreme.
The gore here is aggressive. Yeah, it is definitely gorier than I thought it was going to be. Gory in a silly way, more silly way than sinister.
It's got
a
cartoon edge to it.
Yeah, but there's a lot of there are buckets and buckets of various bodily substances sort of thrown all over our heroic band here. So I think though that even like band stalwarts after 100 full minutes of this,
I think it's going to try anyway.
They're going to feel like they're this is all a little repetitive.
Agreed.
There are whole scenes, scenes go on too long. Scenes are kind of repeated. It's pretty clear that, there are 2 credited screenwriters here, and then Girl gets a story by credit, sure. But there's 2 credited screenwriters here. Nonetheless, it feels like this movie was basically improvised. And
I get that feeling.
I think this explains sort of the presence of Jeff Garlin, who's big on Curb Your Enthusiasm.
That's true.
And so it would be good to have a really skilled improviser there with you. The problem is that there's only so much heavy lifting that that Jeff Garlin and Whitney Cummings and so on can do. There is nothing in the whole world worse than bad improv. I mean, not children with cancer, not racism. Bad improv is the worst thing on earth. And so there are scenes of some really bad improv in this. So it makes it painful in a way that it should be fun and silly and kind of lighter. Dave Grohl can't act at all. The problem is, which, I mean, I guess none of them can. None of them Pat
can.
Smear is not going to be, nominated for,
maybe worse than Dave Grohl.
Right, but Grohl is really clearly places himself as the star of this movie, and he's got an interesting face, but he is really mugging it up in a way that
it's like the Kevin Smith school of acting in some ways, where it's all facial and sort of not.
Yeah, he's pretty convinced that you're going to be entertained just by the sight of his big dumb face. And I mostly wasn't.
I mostly wasn't either, especially the second half of the movie. Yeah, I just kind of think that this is an ill-conceived thing that kind of got snowballed away. It was supposed to be something fun to do while you had some free time.
Yeah, I mean, nonetheless, there was. I wasn't mad at this movie for
I
its
wasn't.
badness.
I wasn't angry.
And
at this movie.
I got to thinking about the kinds of movies that make me angry at how bad they are. Right. And this is a movie that's certainly bad enough to make me angry, but it didn't, because I guess it's a situation of sort of like what it's trying to do. And
low expectations. I mean, that's
also I was very helped by seeing this with my friend Jeff, who is a big Foo Fighters fan. Hello to Jeff. I know he's at least listening to this episode. And he enjoyed it, right? But I think it's one of those things where that you kind of lock in before you even sit down what your level of enjoyment of this movie is going to be, right?
Yeah, I think
so. When you hear a horror comedy starring Foo Fighters, right?
And the biggest horror in this movie is the idea of a 45-minute song to me.
Yeah.
That's hell.
Yes. So there's I guess I was expecting there to be a little more music in this.
Yeah, I thought there'd be a little more music in it too.
Used as filler. used as, let's just see us sort of jam on this, on this new song or something like that. But,
John Carpenter had the little, did you see that?
I saw that,
the cameo, but then he's got a co-score writing credit.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't notice that. I noticed
which, he's got a long history of writing his own scores.
That's true, including the iconic Halloween music.
Yeah, but I didn't notice that feel here much.
One final thing is, of these 6 members of this group, Grohl, Taylor Hawkins, and so on, they look like your kind of standard sort of, kind of aging, rock stars, right? Pat Smear looks like a retired accountant, right? He looks like or like an architect, right? He looks like he's got this very sort of very grandpa sort of feel to him, and it sort
of looked like that on an MTV Unplugged with Nirvana all those years ago.
Well, I mean, this is and this is a guy who is kind of brought a real punk edge to a lot of his bands in the 90s, and it I don't know. It makes you smile, but also kind of sad. how old we're getting, right?
Yeah, I remember hearing conversations about the Beatles when they were young, when they were in their 20s, thinking, well, 35. There's just no way you're going to be able to rock and roll at 35.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And I remember hearing interview with Paul McCartney at about to turn 50, and he's like, well, it doesn't feel bad yet.
Yeah.
And now we're. I think Paul's going on tour this summer, and he's 80 some odd.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, as long as the Rolling Stones are still kicking around, there's no there's going to be precedent for rocking until you literally have to be carried away.
I always love that. There's that moment in one of my favorite movies, Almost Famous, when Jimmy Fallon's giving a financial advice to the band, and he says, if you think Mick Jagger's going to be dancing around when he's 50 years old, you got that thing coming,
right?
Well,
yeah, and of course
things have not turned out like that, but I can see why they thought that at the time. Yeah, so I would recommend this only to the biggest of fans, and even I think most of those big fans are going to come away thinking, okay, that was sort of a lark, but man, did it go on too long.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you smile, but then after 100 minutes, your face is kind of hurts from smiling. Right? Your face is kind of cramping.
Yeah.
So that's Studio 666. It caused face cramps.
All right, well, that's going to be our review of Studio 666. We're going to take a quick break and be right back after this. And we are back on Cinema Spin. The randomizer has so graciously chosen for us the film Red Heat from 1988. Red Heat was directed by Walter Hill, who had found previous success in films like 48 Hours, Brewster's Millions, and The Warriors way back when.
Right. We watched The Warriors on this very podcast.
The movie stars a career peak Arnold Schwarzenegger as Captain Ivan Danko, a Soviet police officer sent to America to extradite a Russian drug fugitive. He is soon paired up with Chicago cop Art Ridzik, played by Jim Belushi. Ridzik is a walking movie cop stereotype, as he is good at his job but does not like to play by the rules. Oh yeah, and he hates paperwork. Don't get him started on how much he hates paperwork, or he'll talk about it the whole movie long, and he does. Predictably, this simple extradition fails to go simply as the Russian kingpin escapes and goes on the run. It's at this point that our odd couple of cop buddies must find some common ground so they can work together and bring their fugitive to justice. I would go a bit further here into the plot, but there is not one single thing in this whole movie that does not have we've seen 1,000 times before. Car chases, yep. Uncomfortable banter between the two leads, check. And even an irate police commander to boot. All this goes down in the least convincing film version of Chicago ever concocted. It's clearly L.A. with a bare minimum of second unit establishing shots of Chicago streetscapes thrown in. Just make sure that most of the cars have Illinois license plates, and they're done. There's
at no point is there a palm tree in the background.
No, it's not quite that
Although
bad.
You said that at one point the Cecil Hotel is in the
Yeah, twice it's in it.
Oh, is it? Okay. Well, we'll come back to that.
There's even a shot of the two cops driving on a bridge across the L.A. River, the Los Angeles skyline clearly visible behind them.
Right. Yes.
Ugh, how was your repeat viewing of Red Heat?
No, I'd never seen this movie before.
Really? I saw this in '88. You know.
I mean, I'd never seen it before, but it felt like I'd seen it before.
Well, I'm damn sure that's true.
So this movie, it kicks off in Russia, right? With a fight between Arnold Schwarzenegger and another naked muscle man outside of a bathhouse, when he has to bust him. Anyway, they were both in their skivvies out in the snow fighting, right? A scene later, he shakes down this guy who turns out to have a fake leg, right? These scenes are they're both okay,
Yeah.
Enjoy it, man, because when they're gone, you're going to miss them. And there's no getting them back, because here come the cliches, right? The police captain needs bypass surgery. The detective ogles hookers, right? And can't stop talking about his dick. How do Russians deal with the stress? Vodka, right? That's this movie's idea.
You could write this movie yourself.
Right. Yeah. This movie did, I think, write itself.
I think it did.
Or like some early computer program on a Macintosh, right? So Walter Hill, is the 1982 movie 48 Hours basically invented the buddy cop genre, and he just very lazily recycles that movie's formula here without any hints of extra flavor or originality. Unfortunately, James Belushi is no Eddie Murphy, and Arnold here doesn't even get to be himself. He had more acting opportunities in Conan the Barbarian. He's just a straight man. The women in this movie exist to say things like, I don't have to take this shit, and I'm out of here. I've had it with this macho stuff. Take me with you, sister.
I have a disdain for Jim Belushi.
Yes.
And I always have.
Okay.
Is he only famous because his brother died?
Maybe.
It's
tough to think of the salad days of Jim Belushi.
Was the public
career.
like, okay, we really sort of revered Jim Belushi. He died kind of tragic, obviously self-imposed circumstances. But, we miss him. What else you got? And the Belushi family is like, we got Jim.
Yeah.
Is he as talented and charismatic as his brother?
No way. Right? But he'll always sort of remind you that John Belushi was once a thing.
That's right. We'll take him. It's a good thing we had Jim, because the third stringer was like Chet Belushi. And I don't think you even want to see what he
Chet Belushi.
The third best Belushi brother. I don't think we want to see that.
Yeah, I mean Belushi I don't know. At least he has the good taste to look miserable throughout this whole movie. I mean, he realizes how bad this movie is. He realizes that all of his jokes are about his dick. Then again, he could have brought something to the table. I mean, Eddie Murphy's character in 48 Hours. I hate to compare the two, but there it is, right? I mean, the same formula, and he's supposed to be the comic relief here. And Eddie Murphy in 48 Hours was able to sort of shine his way through that pretty awful material. And Jim Belushi just doesn't really bring anything to the table. It's
because he's not a talented person.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say it, but it just, to me, he never has been.
Yeah.
I mean, in a sitcom, I've seen it, him be a little more passable, because that formula is just so easy to pull off if you're an actor.
Yeah.
This is just dreadful from the start to finish. It just, I don't know. I just didn't care for it.
This movie's idea of a big laugh line, is at one point Belushi tells the Schwarzenegger character, "You look like Gumby," which is framed as though they're going to have to pause to give the audience a second to recompose themselves, right? Because everybody's just going to be laughing that we mentioned Gumby, right?
Well, but they called back to it several times.
But it doesn't make any sense. He doesn't look like Gumby.
No, I know. Because Gumby's
tall? Just a fun word, I guess. What it does is it invites us to think of Eddie Murphy again, right? And they don't want us to be. They don't want us to be thinking too much about Eddie Murphy in this movie.
No, something that happened in this movie that I thought was just, made me laugh. There's a scene when Arnold and and Jim Belushi are coming out of an office, and they see the person they're looking for starting to run away. And Jim Belushi looks at him and yells, "Hey!" which startles the person and makes him start to run. That's not a good way to catch somebody.
No. So I don't think there's a lot of great police work going on in this movie.
There isn't.
So they have a conversation about and there's a sort of running joke about a parakeet in this movie.
Yes.
What's
wrong with parakeet?
What is wrong with? That scene works, and it's like if that scene can work, if whatever you're doing with the chemistry here is able to work in that scene, you could have. Can't you like tease out the rest of the movie from there? Because it seems in that scene like both of these actors are kind of on the same kind of
the writing is onto something there.
Yeah, it's onto something
that could
there.
work.
Right? Yeah, and there's chemistry between them in that scene that is totally lacking anywhere else. So I just wonder. I wonder if that was an early scene that was shot early in the production, and they still believe
because that's really
believe in this.
The
project,
only time when they lean into they're like the differences as men,
Yeah.
How he's this macho, stereotypical cop,
right?
And he's he's this obviously iron-looking fellow who's gigantic, but he's got this he doesn't see anything feminine about having a bird,
even though he's self-conscious about it.
Just like Mickey Rourke in Iron Man. My bird.
My bird.
Russian people and their birds. What's up with that?
Russians and their birds. Actually, and this is worth pointing out this week especially. He's not Russian. He's actually Ukrainian. He says he's from Kiev.
That's true. And
right.
And of course, he also corrects and says he's Soviet.
Yeah, well, Soviet. Right.
Which,
yes. Right. So, and let go Ukraine. So, there's one scene in the climax of this movie. Okay, because this is one of those movies where the confrontations between the good Russian and the bad Russian, they just keep having these confrontations and these sort of hissing threats at each other scenes where nothing is really established, nothing really happens, there's nothing really at stake. You realize, this movie isn't at the 90-minute mark yet, so they can't kill each other yet, right? And so there are several scenes like that. So at the end, when it's time for a sort of final confrontation, the bad Russian steals a bus, a city bus, right? And Schwarzenegger's Ukrainian he responds in the only way you can by stealing another city bus, right? And I'm thinking, okay, now I'm gonna maybe see something that I haven't seen before.
I thought this movie is going to have a cool car chase. That's going to kind of save it a little bit.
City buses, yes. No, and let me tell you the problem. They had a budget for exactly 2 buses. Because you expect, okay, well now what we're going to see these buses like driving down the road and like slamming into each other. There is no bus-on-bus action at all, right?
They sort of can't take chances with
the
bus.
And in fact, I said to my wife as we were watching this, I said, is there only one actual bus in this movie? But no, then they totally destroy 2 buses.
Okay.
Right.
You're right.
But
they do.
yes. But it did get, that scene got me thinking about playing Grand Theft Auto and how, in collecting the badges for that, you have to get all the police in the city after you. And the best way to do that is to steal a city bus and just drive over anything that gets in your way.
There's a street they use in this with the United Artists Theater in the background.
Oh yeah,
that whole street is recreated in Grand Theft Auto. It's like it's like the slum area in that the theater that Michael can buy in the game. He can buy the theater.
Oh, okay, yeah,
and that's that theater,
right? So which scene is the Cecil Hotel in?
It's in when the villains very first show up in the in Chicago.
Yeah,
and it's like almost exactly like 15 minutes in. Mm-hmm. It's the scene when they tear the $100 bill in half.
Oh, okay.
At that time, the Cecil Hotel had a like a yellow cheesy facade on it, like very 80s, and it's lit up, I guess, and it says Hotel Cecil.
Oh yeah,
clearly you can see it.
Yeah.
The Rotten Tomatoes for Red Heat is sort of interesting. Critic score is 65% on Red Heat. Audience score 37%.
Yeah,
that's weird.
Well, the audience Yeah, that's one case where the audience knows what they're doing more than the.
Normally, this type of movie, critics. You'd think the audience would be more likely to go for it than critics. To me, it seems like that'd be the norm.
Right, yeah.
But this one kind of flaunts convention in that way.
Yeah. There's a lot of hand-wringing in our current sort of movie climate about how mainstream movies have just been taken over by superheroes. How you can't make mainstream movies anymore that don't have guys in tights and everything, right? And to that argument, I always, especially with regard to the MCU, I always tell people or want to tell people that, well, go back to any earlier era and look at most of the commercial movies that were made for that era. Is that what you miss? You want to go back to an era where they're churning out movies like Red Heat, movie after movie after movie, like following that same 48 Hours formula. Because the difference, the question is not whether we need another new Captain America movie or Gone with the Wind,
right?
Schindler's List. The question is whether or not we're going to get, what kind of commercial movie we're going to get, right? And I don't think commercial movies have ever been very good. And I think the people complaining about them loudest in the MCU era are the sorts of people who never like commercial movies.
I think it's become a little bit of a problem in certain aspects that, now granted, a lot of these movies are not great all the time, but the higher budget film that's targeted towards adult audiences only.
Yeah.
Kind of doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
I was watching something, and the example they used was like a movie like how much like Bonfire of the Vanities cost, and of course that's a huge flop.
Yes.
And but it was a hugely budgeted film.
Yeah.
And that kind of film would never, and Bonfire of the Vanities is probably part of the reason.
Yeah.
Why that kind of film doesn't get greenlit anymore. But what about like an Apollo 13? Does a movie like that get made today, or Titanic? What the hell's wrong with it?
Well,
too many syllables in there.
Yeah, I mean those movies are different because Titanic is clearly aimed at it has a target demographic that is not entirely adult.
Touche.
And I've been I'm a defender of that movie in some ways, but that movie was always going to appeal primarily to young ladies, right? Those were going to be the people who would see it over and over again, right?
And Titanic aficionados.
Yeah, well, yeah, right. I mean, Apollo 13, has a certain. That's a good example of a movie that maybe doesn't get made anymore. But then just a few years ago, there was a movie about there was a major release about the space program. I think those movies.
Yeah, the Neil Armstrong movie, right?
Yeah, First Man.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Arguably, there was a time when there was commercial trash just for adults, and I think this was an era of that, right, where we could have, this movie's got to be rated R, doesn't it?
Right.
So there was,
nudity at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Arguably there was a time when grown people were they were getting bilked for by a movie like Red Heat. But is that what we want? We want to return to a time when there's also commercial pap for that flashes some breasts once in a while.
Yeah, that's a good point. It'll be interesting to see how something as groundbreaking as like the technique they used to make The Mandalorian, that going forward. Mm-hmm. How that's going to change movies, because if that technology becomes readily available to any studio at any time, that's going to revolutionize films.
Yeah, you won't need actors anymore.
Well, you need actors. You're just not going to need sets of any kind.
Yeah,
it's like blue screen, but it fools the eye.
Yeah,
I think that's the most exciting thing in movie filmmaking, because when that becomes affordable enough for like indie people to be able to make movies like that, that means that indie movies don't have to be, two people talking in a room for 2 hours anymore.
Yeah.
It's going to open the door to some creativity, I think. And it might open the door to some true, monstrosities of filmmaking.
Yeah.
But no, that's the risk you take.
Yeah. So. I think there are a lot of people who have of our age who have a certain have a nostalgia certainly for the 80s and the 90s, and they remember original movies like Back to the Future or Ghostbusters, but and say, well, where are those movies these days? It's all guys, it's all Thanos and guys in tights, right? It's easy to remember a couple of the really big hits of the 80s and 90s and forget what a nonstop stream of really awful movies like Red Heat were there to sort of try to squeeze out some a little bit of money from.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the good examples you can think of big money being spent on things that aren't necessarily, would definitely not be spent now are usually bad movies. The Waterworlds, Cutthroat Island, things that really cost a lot of money.
Cutthroat Island that ran the studio that
was it Carolco or something?
Carolco,
like that?
Yeah.
That was this studio, right?
Yeah,
Red Heat.
Red Heat, ran Red Heat out of business, right?
Yeah. So I mean, that type of movie is probably not being made anymore. But what are we really missing? I guess.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my sort of tangent.
No, I think that's a fair point. I think that studios are greenlighting a lot of that type of stuff because that's where the money is, and it's easy to see that some audience is going to be there. It's hard. It's hard to lose money in that genre right now.
Exactly. Probably. Right. And if you're going to pay $200 million for a movie, you want to know exactly who's going to watch it. Right?
Yeah.
And right now, the comic book movies make a really strong argument that of who their audience is.
All right. Well, that's Red Heat.
Okay, and Red Heat is is Red Heat a worse movie than Studio 666? I don't know, but Red Heat is the kind of bad that makes me angry. Right?
And it doesn't get the benefit of the doubt. It has 0 Foo Fighters in it.
Yeah, well,
or any rock musicians.
Send more Foo Fighters
that I know of at all.
Right. So,
okay. So next week we know that we're doing Batman for sure. Excuse
me, the Batman. Because DC is now all about the definite articles, right?
That's
the Suicide Squad, the Batman.
That's right. And they've done Batman before. Now this is the Batman. So we're doing Batman, and we're going to find a random movie to pair up with it right now.
Okay. I can't wait. Sounds so triumphant.
Okay. Well, this is certainly topical, but it does prove that our randomization is random. What's better than a Home for the Holidays movie? Home for the Holidays from 1995.
Okay. Yes. Just in time for...
Holly Hunter, maybe?
Yes. And Robert Downey Jr.
Never seen a minute of it.
Okay. Yes, just in time for the holidays.
Yeah, just in time for the holidays.
Right. So, but hey, that's the nature of randomization. So,
that's right.
We take what they send. So what?
So join us for
God sends. Yes, go on.
The Batman, as well as Home for the Holidays. Which, if that's not a pair made in heaven, I don't know what.
Yeah,
is.
Right. I think that's a natural sort of combination.
Yeah, so that'll be the show next week. Join us then, and good night for now.
Good night.